Hello, everyone. I'm Derek Mazzarella. I'm here with Gateway Financial Partners, and I am actually very lucky to be here today with Shell Sawyer. Shell, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Derek.
No problem. Well, I'm really excited today. I know we're talking about kind of a weird, funky subject that most people probably don't want to talk about. It's
Mhm.
helping people through their divorce. But I want to start off with a quick background on Shell. She started out in the accounting industry. She did that for over 20 years. So she's got a wealth of financial knowledge. And then she transitioned that into being a divorce mediator, certified divorce financial coach. And she's also a financial coach. So she's a triple threat here. So we are
Love it.
excited to understand how you help people, what challenges most people have, and how you can kind of work through it. So, Shell, you ready to get started?
I am. What a great introduction. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So why don't we just start with the basics? How do you actually help clients?
Yeah. So, like you said, I am a mediator. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst and a divorce coach. So, I really help people make smart decisions in their divorce. I do that by using my experience that you talked about, and I show them the clear data so that so I can make suggestions and they can make decisions. So I help them come up with those good settlement options, like what's good for them, and really help them focus on what they need. And here's the clincher here, Derek, is that I can really save them money. And how I do that, and you can totally understand this, is I help them prepare and I help them organize. And so
I'm a
then
big
they
fan of
can,
those two things.
those two things,
Yeah.
yes, being prepared and being organized, like there's some great things about those two things is that
Yeah.
one, it eliminates fear, right? You are going into it, you're empowered, you have the data, you know what you're talking about, right? And I'm going to help you prepare for that, all those conversations. And then you can really focus, right? Because divorce, as we all know, and Derek said it, it's not a topic that we all like to talk about,
Right.
but divorce is a very trying time for a lot of people, like one of the biggest, life events that you can go through. And it's so emotional. And having somebody there to help you just hold your hand through the whole way, that's my goal.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you have this huge emotional event happening, and
Hmm.
most people are probably, I'm sure that are seeing you're probably going through this for the first time. So it's not
Yeah.
like they know, oh, I know what I need to do for this process. So
Hmm.
if they're just coming to see you and say, okay, well, how do I decide who gets what, or how do I decide what I should get
Yeah.
for alimony, or all of those questions, I'm sure are just running
Hmm.
through their minds, and they're probably just running right to Google, and they're probably looking at 40 or 50 different options for it. So,
Yeah. And I
what,
like what you just said there too,
yeah,
because like they're Googling, right? They're very emotional, and sometimes it's just hard to make decisions at a time when it's like sometimes like depending on where you are in that process, you might not even want to get out of bed,
right.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and kind of what I've experienced, at least on my end, is that sometimes clients will Google something, and it may be a great advice, but it's not great advice for them. So I think,
Right.
kind of
Every
going back,
divorce is unique,
yeah,
there's and like it's probably very similar to what you do. Like everybody has different assets, everybody has different liabilities, so making decisions, and they all have different needs, right? So it's
right.
unique to them, right? And listening
Yeah.
to friends, family, Google might not be the best
I was
way to
just
go.
I was just going to ask you that, because I'm sure they probably reach out to a friend that's maybe been through this before and say, hey, what do I
Yeah.
do? And they're giving them
Right.
advice that's based on their experience, not
Yeah.
necessarily. And our society, we don't really talk finances with anyone. So I
Mm-mm.
can't imagine they have a good insight on what that person's finances are. And they're giving advice that
Right.
they know very little about, really.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, they could have just gone through it once, right? And to them, that was their experience, and they're, nice enough to share it, but it might not be like suitable for, your own divorce and what you're going through.
Right. So
Might be
why don't
so
we get a little
different.
bit of that? What are kind
Yeah.
of the financial items that you really help your clients out with?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest things that I help with, right, is just helping people know what they owe and what they own, right?
Mhm.
Looking at that data, creating a cash flow statement, and looking at what does the future like for them. So one of the biggest pieces that people get caught up on is, should I stay in the home or should I sell it? or
Mhm.
refinance it. That might be, that's a
Right.
decision too. And that tends to be a very emotional decision for most people. So it's either based on like they don't want to disrupt the children, or
Right.
maybe it's a place of refuge for them, right? And they're really adamant that they don't want to give it up. But what I see is that some people just can't afford it, right? It was a home that maybe there was two incomes coming in and you were both able to afford your lifestyle on those two incomes. And then now you're just going to try to do it on your own, right? With one income coming in. Maybe there'll be some alimony, maybe there won't.
Mhm.
But I help you look at that entire picture of what that cash flow statement looks like. What does it cost to own the home? But not even that, right? Because the if there's big cost owning a home, it's not
Right.
just the mortgage, it's the taxes, it's the insurance, it's the upkeep and the maintenance,
Right.
that goes with owning a home, the
Yeah.
landscaping,
Usually one person's
uh,
handling the roles of the house too, and how do you navigate that
right.
as well?
Yeah. So you might go from like your husband, maybe it's your ex-husband, used to do all the lawn, right? And now maybe you have to hire somebody,
Right.
so thinking about all of that. But also, like, can you really afford it? Like, looking at that whole picture. And what are you giving up in order to afford this home? Are you going to have to forego maybe a vacation,
Right.
right? Maybe now you're not going to be able to go on a vacation for 5 years. Are you willing to do that, right? And there's so many other charges, like your cable bill. Some people have cut cable, but like you still have Netflix, right? And you still have
Thank you
your
for
cell
that.
phone bill. Like
Right.
looking at that entire picture and making sure that that home can fit in nicely with that is something that a lot of people get really hung up on, and that's something that I help them work through. Is just that fear, like, am I going to be able to afford it? Am I going to be able to afford a life without my ex-husband or ex-wife? What is that going to look like? I'll help them make sure that they can and what they need to do that.
Well, that's great. I'm sure that's probably the biggest uncertainty by far going into the process, especially because your finances are so intertwined as a couple. You may not even
Yeah.
realize if you kind of operate in silos, which I find that some couples do, but they do
Mhm.
come together on the main expenses. So,
Yeah. And
I
you're
mean,
affording it like together, right?
right.
You're
Yeah. You're
affording
usually
your
not getting a
lifestyle
mortgage by
together.
yourself. You're usually both on the title. You're both on the mortgage. You're both on the car
Hmm.
payments, for example, usually. So a lot of the big things are usually are done together in general. It's just small stuff like,
Hmm.
hey, you want to go buy a purse, you want to go buy a golf clubs. That's usually something you're doing on your own anyway.
Right.
Big stuff is something you need to make sure you're going through. So
Yeah. Yeah.
any other aspects of the finances? I know the cash flow is generally the driver of everything, but is there anything else you really kind of uniquely go through with clients in terms of their finances?
It is like just having a budget at the end of the day, sometimes it's a very big eye opener. So like I said, like what's different about me
Mhm.
and what you get with me than going through with an attorney, right? Is that you get that clear look at those settlement options, but also those long-term implications to some of the decisions you're making. Are you going to have any tax impacts? What does this look like?
Right.
Um, and a simple thing, this is just an example of what we do is like if you're going to be owning the home as a single person rather than a couple, you have to look at those capital gains implications. So when you do sell the home, what does that look like?
Right.
Right. So there's different every decision comes with a tax impact because that's just life as we know it, right?
Yeah.
So
The same
knowing that,
everywhere. Right.
yeah, knowing that and knowing what that future holds for you, or like is there something better for you? The difference between 401ks and Roths, they all have different divorce specific implications.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's a
Yeah.
big argument between all right, who's getting which plan and all of that
Hmm.
stuff. That
Yeah,
matters now and it matters, later. And it's,
it does.
you probably help people project that stuff out too and figure out kind of
I do. We look at the long term and we say, like, would it be better for you to have your 401k, which are pre-tax dollars, but should you have a more well-rounded portfolio? Should you have some of the Roth in there?
right.
So you've already paid taxes on those. So every distribution that you take in retirement is not taxable.
Right. And you said it
Yeah.
right there. So if you're, if you usually get divorced, you go from married, finally jointly to something else, whether it's head of household or
Mm.
single, that
Or
changes your
single. Yeah,
is your tax bracket. So that's
it
always something
does.
to look at as well. Great. So what's kind of a common misconception you run into or people have about divorces in general before they go into it?
Yeah. So I think everyone feels like as soon as they decide to get a divorce, they need to go get an attorney.
Mhm.
And that might not be the right way to go. There's so
Okay.
many different ways to divorce, right? But the way to succeed at a divorce is kind of like what I talked about before, that making sure you're prepared, you're organized, and you've thought everything through, right? So, in other words, like planning ahead is the best way to forge through. And then you figure out your path forward. So that's something like you'll be able to, like, if you have a thought partner like me, we can walk through all that. What is it going to look like? What are some of the things that you need to do? If you need a referral to a good attorney, what does that, what kind of attorney would work well for you? I can give you those referrals and help you get situated so you are using the right attorney for you. Or maybe you're going to decide to go the mediation route,
Right.
because you two are amicable and you can make decisions together. And the great thing about that is you can keep it, if you can do mediation, which I always tell everybody just to try if you can,
Yeah.
it keeps it very private. It's not in you're staying out of the courtroom, you're staying away from the lawyers, you're making decisions that are right for you and your family.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very important. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past was kind of the dynamics between the two spouses. I always thought that was kind of interesting, and maybe I
Yeah.
thought it would be good to explore. You kind of
Sure.
mentioned that there's typically one that initiates and one that doesn't. So, how does the
Mm.
emotional aspect of that kind of tie into this?
Yeah. So the way I describe a divorce, right, is it's you're walking down a path, and you need to travel down this whole path to get to the other side to be done, right? So you have to go through this path,
Mhm.
and there's like rest stops along this path, and
Right.
it's almost like very like grief oriented, right? So someone who has been contemplating this for a while and maybe initiated it, they might have already stopped at a few paths. And so they might have already stopped at the rest stops. They might have stopped at, denial. They might have been in denial for a long time, and they may have moved on to anger, and that can be a tricky one.
Yeah.
But once they finally start going through that process, they could be at acceptance already. So they're ready to get going, ready to get through it, ready to get it over with. Where the other spouse might still be back a few stops. They might be in denial, or possibly when we're going through the divorce process and doing mediation, they're at anger. So they're spouting angry words at the spouse, right? And understanding that the two of you just might be on separate stops along this path is so important. And it's interesting to see the dynamics happen,
I'm
with
sure that
that.
must be one of the biggest challenges because you've got two people that are not as amicable as they probably would be, making major financial decisions, major life decisions for their family, and they're
Hmm.
on two different tracks. So that must be very
Yeah.
challenging. So I can see how
Yeah.
having a
And one might
neutral
feel
party.
like totally blindsided by the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And so they're angry about that alone, just like they can't believe that they're there and
Right.
doing this.
I
Yeah.
can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you kind of mentioned this earlier. Um, we got yourself as the financial coach, divorce coach, mediator, all three.
Right.
Triple threat, Shell Sawyer.
I like it.
When does someone see the triple threat versus say, hey, look, I definitely need to see an attorney. This is just kind of out of the realm of.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say always see me first.
Okay.
And the reason being is because no matter if you decide to go down that path of attorney, or maybe you need to have somebody that can advocate for you, um, I can help you get prepared for that, right? Like I mentioned before, having you get prepared, having you get organized, you can make decisions about the long run and focus forward, right? I offer a free consultation. So during that time, we could talk about, where are you on this path?
Yeah.
If you're just contemplating it and thinking about it and like want to know next steps, we can talk about that. what should you be doing? I have checklists to help people gather their information, look at their finances. We can start putting something like that together so that you don't fear that future. But I would say even if this is the case, if there's any kind of domestic violence, abuse, and any kind, or you don't feel like the two of you can make good decisions together, always seek an attorney. They can help advocate for you and be like a good partner, and work with me too, and I can help make sure that you're making the right decisions for yourself and your family along the way.
Yeah, that's a good kind of delineation there. So I'm going to ask a
Yeah.
Michelle. So can you just walk through kind of the process of someone, what they would expect to go through? And I was like, okay, so step one is typically we do this, then two, then three. And how does that kind of go through the process for someone?
Yeah. So step one is usually a free consultation. We'll talk about like what your needs are, where you are in the process, what you need to do. And then the first step would be deciding on what's the best path forward for you. Is it getting an attorney? Is it doing mediation? I can help you with that. Is it doing a more collaborative? There's collaborative groups out there that do.
Yeah.
You have everybody from attorneys. It can be costly, but you have a whole group of people that support one another and you do it together.
Yeah.
Or maybe you do it yourself, right? A lot of people come to me and they don't have the money for divorce, right? Because it sounds so overwhelming, and usually attorneys require a retainer. But we talk through like what you can do, right? Okay. And then after that, if you decide to work with me, we decide to do mediation. We'll get going down that path, right, of mediation. Or if you just need to have your finances done before you're going to go work with your attorney, we'll do that. We'll walk through. You can give me I have like a checklist of items that I need to kind of do a good settlement option for you. And I'll walk you down that path and hold your hand the whole way. I'm with you the whole time you're in your divorce process. I make sure you're taken care of. We have coaching sessions. We get prepared for your attorney visits. Like, what are some good questions to ask? What do you need to watch out for? So that when you get to your attorney, you can be a good client for them and really focus on not the story of why you're getting divorced, but the business of divorce, and focus on that.
Okay, that's great. So I'm sure the attorneys appreciate it. Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Because I hear from attorneys that a lot of it is emotionally driven at first, right? So if they can get a client to really focus and be there with them, attorneys probably don't make the best therapists. So if you do need a therapist, that's probably or work with a coach like me, and I can help you make sure that, if you want to take the emotions out on me, I'm here. Right. But leave the business of the divorce for the attorney.
Right. Okay, great. Shell, a lot of great information. Really appreciate it. One more question for you. How do we get in touch with you?
Okay. My business name is called Finding Strength with Shell. And this is a good question, Derek. So I'm at www.findingstrengthwithshell.com. I know that's a long domain name, and it's shell@findingstrengthwithshell.com. Reach me there.
Okay, well, we can throw it up here so you'll be able to see it.
Okay, good. That might be helpful.
Yeah, if you guys are visual, we got you covered.
Copy and pasting, right?
Yeah, right.
That might be easy.
All right, Shell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Derek. It was so nice talking to you today.
Hey.
Love it.